I have 32 years of sobriety, and I met Loel when I arrived at San Francisco Seminary in August of 1985 from Ohio. I was 10 months sober and had the faintest idea what I was doing, but I knew I needed to go to seminary, and the people in AA thought I should do it, and I arrived at San Francisco Seminary, and this woman came down the hall in her Birkenstocks with flowing blouse and long dangly earrings, and what? I thought she was going to interview me for a job interview, but she said, no, I'm not here about a job, I'm here about a meeting, and you look like you need one. And so that night after work, she came by my new apartment and took me to my first AA meeting in San Rafael at the Alano Club with all these motorcycles. I mean, I was scared to death. But there we were in the Alano Club, and at the end of the meeting, when we said that prayer, I knew I was home. Mm-hmm. And she volunteered, actually announced that she would be my sponsor. And that was a relationship that went on for the last 32 years. And so I was a single mom with 2 little kids from Ohio, and she teased me, she nudged me, she shook me when I needed it, and I was just so many things over the years, but always, she channeled God's love and truth, and helped me grow up and become the sober, relatively mature, sober woman that I am today. And so I'm very grateful to be here. I'm going to pass this along. And if each of you would just remembering that there's lots of people, if there's something you want to say about Loel, well, why don't you stand and give your years of sobriety. Bethany's going to keep tabs on that.
I'm Victoria G., and I have 31 years sober. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Victoria.
I'm going to cry. I met Loel in 1986 when I was at Ross Hospital Rehabilitation for chemical dependency. Those of you who are not in AA, there's something called H&I. It's a hospital and institution meeting that people volunteer to bring into places like I was. I was in a lockdown ward, and she came in and brought an AA meeting and told her story. I have 5 children, and at the time they were very young, and I quickly related to your mother because she had 3 sons. I have 3 sons and 2 daughters. I followed her to the elevator of the unit, and it was a locked unit, so they had to unlock the elevator, and the doors were opening, and they said, you can't go in there. I said, yes, I have to. I need this woman. And it was your mom. And I asked her, I said, would you be my sponsor? And she said, she had a card. She said, here's my number. So I got out of rehab. I've been sober ever since. Your mom saved my life. She taught me how to be a woman. She taught me how to be compassionate with myself, with my kids. And she was patient. She was a mother I never had. I'm so honored to be here and pay tribute to her life. One of the funniest things that happened was when I was in early sobriety, and then I'll shut up. I know there's a lot of people here, but I was one of those Marinite women, you know, with the kids and the snooty attitude. She told me to wash my face, take off my makeup, and be real. And I did that. And she said, stop going to those meetings where everybody dresses up. I want you to go to the Alano Club all the time. And sit there and be grateful and humble. And I did that. So like I said, I'm grateful to be here, and I have such gratitude and love for Loel. I adore her. I called her the goddess of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Megan, I'm alcoholic.
Hi, Megan.
I celebrated 36 years this year, thanks to Loel. I also want to send greetings from Forrest. Morris, who many of you remember. Loel remembers him when he was 2 years old when I got sober. And he used to be at the Alano Club, kind of peering over the edges of the, I appreciated Loel because I would go to meetings and I would hear women share, well, I turn my will and my life over to the care of God and everything is just wonderful and da-da-da. And I kind of go, oh, okay, all right, yeah. And Loel would come in and she'd say, you know, my boss is just so infuriating. I am so angry with him. He does, and this is what I'm going to do. I got to go home and I'm going to write about it. I'm going to talk to some people. She would then day after day after day step us through her experience, strength, and hope and getting through stuff like that. Well, I found out I needed to tell him what I needed. And, that would be day 2. And then, we went out to lunch. Things were okay. She would just step us through a solution in very practical, non-kind of whooshy-whooshy type terms. I so appreciated that because I can go I'm Irish, I can go way off into the stratosphere with stuff. But she would always bring me back to earth, back to ground, Megan to earth. I so appreciated what you shared because I was the coordinator for the Ross Hospital meeting, and I was the one that I would always bring Loel in because she was the best speaker. I mean, people would just stop, and even the most growly people who just hated being there would go. And I think I remember, and going there, we would have dinner at my place first, and then we would go and do that, and that's just one of the most powerful, sweet things that I can remember. I also appreciated she was completely non-dogmatic. I would say things like, well, I'm going to a meeting. She said, why are you going to a meeting? Well, I need to stay sober. She said, well, aren't you going to try and find a guy? And I go, that's not what meetings are for, I would say to myself. She said, why not? She said, why not? She was so wonderfully non-dogmatic about stuff. I so appreciate that. I also really want to thank her family. One of the things that did my heart so much good was to know she was surrounded with so much love at the end. She was just surrounded with so much of your love. And that meant so much to me. Thank you so very much.
Well, I'm Andy. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Andy.
Bethany, I don't know if you want to write this down, but I've had 50 years in the program. I will tell you that when I was about, I told people I was at a meeting, I said, I'm going to be an alcoholic when I grow up. and that surprised the people I was talking to. They said, why? I said, well, then I could join AA because it was such a good experience. I'll tell you, I'd like to delay the rest of my speech because it's a long one until the end. It might go right up till 6 o'clock. I don't want to but I will pass. Sure. This is my daughter, Tara.
Hi, Tara.
She was 14 years sober.
Hi everybody, I'm Evan. I am Loel's nephew. And we're Loel, Marston, Lamar, Buckley, Nana. But to me, she was Auntie Lolo. Everybody said, what do you call Auntie Lolo? I said, I don't know. It's just who she was all the time. And we'd get together. Andy, as you as well, I had 50 years in the program as well. The thing is, you had one mother. I had 2 mothers. Because I had one here, and growing up in Marin County, I had both of them beaten up on me at the same time. They tried to keep me in line. So I tried to do my best, but if one didn't do it, there was a tag team, and I had the other one calling me up and taking care of me at the same time. We're cousins, but as most people know, or some people know, that twins share the same genes, which means we have the same genes, and means we're half brothers. And a lot of the stories that we would share, maybe being over at the house in Vine Street, I'm still reminiscing about going down Cement Slide Park, my grandfather's waffles, which I still make today, being out and oh my gosh, going to Jack London Square in Napa, and we were always into comic books. We'd be sitting there reading these comic books, and she said, "No, put the comic books away. You guys would be looking at this stuff." We didn't care about what was going on, but she forced us to do so. She said, "No, you're do this stuff as well, and you think, well, how wonderful it was their childhood that we could spend time in Napa and Calistoga and doing these type of things. So I kept trying to put together a lot of different memories and what would be happening during the time, and as I shared too, that was quite a few of them as well. I'll share two things. I'll try to see which order I can put them in. One of the things, Loel taught me, I'll never forget, is how to hold and love a woman. She says, Evan, a woman wants to be held in your arms like you would never drop her whatsoever, but to be able to hang on to her and be soft so you don't squish her. And I carry that with me. And so when I hug my ladies, I hug you, and if you get a hug from me, yeah, ladies. Well, you know. But they want to be held strong, but not squished as well. On the last note, I'll finish up. One of the other gifts that she gave me is this book right here. She said, Evan, this is my book, and I want it back someday. And obviously, she won't get it back, but I can honor her and respect her by sharing it, and then someday pass it to somebody else. So I'll never give it back. I thought it was appropriate today, especially with the family, that maybe I read from it in today's lesson. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Well, bear with me. I've read it quite often. I'll say one thing about it. It's really amazing that sometimes the things are going on in my life, and I pick up the book and I open it up, and exactly what's happening with my life, and tell me, how the hell do you know that that's exactly what I need to hear that's coming out of this book? So it's really amazing. I read it earlier today, and I thought how appropriate as well. So here we go. In the face of a seemingly impossible problem, it is easy to believe that our most negative thoughts reflect the truth. They plead the worst case scenario in a very convincing way until it almost seems frivolous to consider a positive outcome. Yet the loudest voice is not necessarily the truest. No matter how insistent a feeling may be, it is just a feeling, not a prophecy. We don't get to know today what will happen tomorrow. Counting on any particular outcome can lead to a disappointment, but sometimes it helps to remember that a positive outcome is just as likely as a negative one. We are powerless over the results of our actions. We can try to make wise choices today, but what will happen in the future is out of our hands. Since we can't know what to expect, why not trust that the higher power can use whatever happens to further guide our growth? Today's reminder. Today, I will place the future in the hands of my higher power's hand. I trust that by turning it over, it can be used for my good. And there's always a quote at the end. This time, like all times, a very good one, is a very good one. But if we know what to, I'll say it one more time. This time, like all times, is a very good one, if we but know what to do with it. Thank you. Loel, love you.
Hi, I'm Ruth.
I'm Ruth.
And my connection here is my mother was the cousin of Mala and Loel. And she would love to be here today. She always loved to come up and visit her cousins. And but I remember when I was a child, my mother helped Loel get into AA during a time of need. And Mother did a lot of good work for people, and I'm very proud of that. And she would be so happy to be here with you today and hear all these stories and hear from the people who Loel benefited. So I'm very proud to be from a family of wonderful men and strong women like Loel. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Heather. I've been sober like a week. It'll probably start over again tomorrow. It's an appropriate day for a glass, I feel like. I was Loel's great niece. And actually, I was trying to think about like different memories that I had of her, and there wasn't anything in particular that I could really think of that I thought would be super appropriate, except for the fact that we do have such an extended family that I love that she took an interest in our genealogy, and so I'm looking forward to looking at her work that she did on that, and in settings like this and others, becoming more aware of our family members and getting to know people. So yeah, and I think that's all.
You know,
for
I
me.
thought maybe I should, to introduce you as well, if you haven't met, this is Debbie. She is my girlfriend.
Hi,
And maybe Heather, you can introduce the gentleman next to you.
This is my fiance Jason.
Hey, Jason.
Lo
Hi, Jason.
can never remember his name, but she met him a few times.
Mom.
You can sit if you want.
I thought I was going to start to talk. I'm like, Evan. I'm Mardell. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Mardell.
And I've celebrated 50 years of sobriety.
50 years.
50 years. I need 30 years of it every day, right? But Loel was the one who got me into AA. Ruth, mother, said, took her to her first AA meeting, and then my sister Loel called me and said, go to AA, you'll never be lonely again. And I have been lonely since then, but it's on a different level. Well, it must have worked. I mean, 50 years, that's a long time, day at a time, right?
Right.
So, but it's been a wonderful trip. Look at me, surrounded by all these loving people.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for the record, which one of you is older?
5 minutes.
Which one, you or?
I'm 5 minutes old.
5 minutes older, that's right. So her younger sister.
You don't look it.
Look a day over 3 minutes?
Made a difference.
So I'm Barbara Lee. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Beverly.
And in November, I'll celebrate 31 years of sobriety. And it's a lot of it due to Loel. She was, I attended a meeting at the Alana Club that you referred to, and I really liked what she said, so after the end of the meeting, I went up to her and I said, could you be my temporary sponsor? Because I didn't want a big commitment, you know. And she was willing to be my temporary sponsor, and that lasted, you know, the rest of her life. But she would encourage me to be myself. I had to call her at 7:30 in the morning every day when I was new, and if it was 7:35, she'd ask me why I was late. You know, that was what the kind of sponsor she was, and I needed that. I needed somebody to hold me responsible because nobody had ever done that. The other thing that she did was when I went out with my first husband, I said, well, you know, I really like this guy, you know, what do I say? What do I, you know, what should I do? She says, why don't you be honest for a change? And, you know, and that's just, you know, I remember her driving around her little Volkswagen and, you know, and we drove, go to meetings and stuff. It was great. And anyway, what else was I going to say about her? There was a time a couple years ago when I got to talk to her every day. I'd call her in the morning, and if it was a weekend, my husband was there, and we'd talk on the phone, and we'd do our morning meditation together, and that was really great. And she would always talk, you know, some of you that I've seen here today, I just knew from Loel talking about you. I'd never met you before, but I felt like I knew you from her. And the thing I admired about her the most is she always spoke her mind. And, you know, if somebody gave me a bunch of crap at a meeting, she'd tell me, you know, you tell them to read the third tradition. You know, tell them that, you know, if they give you any guff. So, yeah, she really, she taught me how to be a woman, how to be strong. And there was a lot of people when I was new saying, oh, you shouldn't date anybody, you know, not for a year. She'd say, no, that's ridiculous. You have to learn how to be a woman and you know, sober. You have to be sober on a date, you know, just learn how to relate to people. And she always encouraged me
someone else was saying, you know, I think the women that gravitated towards her were the ones that really needed a mom, you know, and she was like my mom. And she used to say to me, well, I get the sick ones. True. So anyway, I'm really glad that my second husband got to meet her and know her, and she was just a really great lady, and I'm going to really miss her.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you.
Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
And I'm one of Loel's daughter-in-law. And I was one who would always go into her house and paint everything, change everything around.
It's beautiful.
And I mean, we spent quite a few times just being up there, and those were the great moments that I would always remember.
And she worked for your company.
Yes, she did.
Yes. She made the cookie phone calls, yes.
She was Employee of the Year, I think.
Oh, yes. Every year.
Much to Duncan's chagrin, he was hoping for that honor.
I was always second place.
Yeah.
My name's Tom, and I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a river runner. And
Different type of liquid.
yeah,
You're addicted to.
and I'm a friend of the family's, and what is really cool is that Meredith and Loel are 73 years river runners.
Wow.
1944 was their first journey on the water highway in Glen Canyon on a phenomenal flood. If I say 80,000 cubic feet a second, it won't mean anything to you, but a cubic foot's about this big, and there's 80,000 of them every second. That's a lot of water. And they were in these little boats that looked like floating cattle troughs. And they had no life jackets. And I was just looking at this film. There's Loel and her sister and little 7-year-old Joni Nevels and a whole bunch of other people, and they're all floating on this river, down the river of life. And it was just an incredible journey, and it's been an honor to know you and your family, and you've taught me so much about the Marstons and the Marston way, so thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
My name is Patricia, and I am a grateful addict alcoholic.
Hi, Patricia.
And I have 27 years and 3/4, one at a time. And it's, first of all, I just want to say thank you all for being here. It's such a gift. It really is to have you all here. And, you know, I remember I've been reminiscing a lot about when Loel and I first met. I was at the Alana Club. I think I was shaking like a leaf. And I just got through pouring my heart out about my family. And it was this woman that was sitting there with her arms crossed, just looking at me. And she petrified me. And after the meeting, she walked over to me and gently put her hand on my forearm. And the softness and the nectar that came out of this woman, and she said, "Honey, I know how you feel." And it was the very first time in my whole life that somebody could identify with feelings. I didn't know how to, my thoughts and my feelings were all one of the same, and that somebody would know how I felt. So, and she sponsored me years later, but, and I just had left her house, and I just got through sharing my heart with her, and a week later, I'm at the Terra Linda Mall, and I'm walking in the mall, and there's Loel, and she walks right by me, doesn't even say hello, and I was shocked. I said, well, it's the last time I'll ever open up my heart to anyone again, because if that's what I get, and I just walked away, and I was in dismay. I was just devastated. And a month later, I'm at a meeting, and there's Loel. And she looks at me, and she goes, "Oh, honey, there you are. I said, this woman's really crazy. I said, she saw me a month ago. She walked right by me like I didn't exist after I spent time telling her a little bit more about my life. And I looked at her, I said, there I am. I said, you walked right by me at the mall. She says, honey, I wasn't at the mall. I said, yes, you were. And I said to her, she looked at me, she goes, no, I wasn't at the mall. And then she said to me, oh, honey, did I tell you? I said, tell me what? She said, I have an identical twin sister. And I mean, and at first I said, sure you do. But then it comes out that she does have a twin sister who I'm so blessed to have here. But you know, one of the things that Loel taught me how to be is to have a voice. And I came in, I was sleeping in my car, and she used to kick my butt by saying, you know, you weren't homeless, you know, you had a car, you might not have money to go any place with it, so it was steady, you had a roof over your head. But one thing is, don't let people define who you are. Life will do that for you. And I was able to put one foot in front of the other and regain my dignity, which I don't think I ever had, but regained. And she was very adventurous. That's one of the things I loved about Loel. She was always good to go. And some of you might have heard this story and some of you might not, but I took her to a Paco Peña concert, who is a renowned flamenco professor. There are not too many in the world, and came with his group and his company. And he had this flamenco dancer, and we were about the 5th row from the stage, center stage, and apparently I must have leaned over, and my mouth was in awe. I had my mouth wide open, and Loel leans over to me and says, no, honey, you cannot take him home. And I looked at her and I said, that's the last 5th step I'll ever do with you. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie, and I have 11 years sobriety. I met Loel through Patricia. Loel was my grant sponsor. And I can tell now that I've heard more from others how much I got from Loel. So being an Alcoholics Anonymous is a blessing, but it just touches my heart to hear how one person can affect so many lives. And it just is encouraging for me as I keep going and keep talking to people that don't call me when I give them their number, etc. And the ones that do, and just the connections and the fellowship. It really just seems all much more important and heartfelt hearing it in this setting right now. Thanks,
Leslie.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict, and I'm really happy to be here with all of you. Loel was a really unique person, and I met Loel in Point Arena in this dumpy meeting. It was upstairs in this old, Oddfellows hall. And I met Patricia up there too, because we both had a place where we lived. She lived in Irish Beach and I had a place in Point Arena. And Patricia remembers that she and I and our husbands, we had dinner at your house, I remember that. And we took a walk on the beach, and I was looking for a sponsor, and Patricia said, I have one, and I said, can I have her number? Because at that time it was like she had, I don't know how many years, but it was like, oh, great. And I know today people will have sponsors with less years. It doesn't really matter so much. But so I see Loel at the meeting, and I got her number, and she was pretty jazzy. She had these big earrings on, and she's older. And anyway, Patricia said she's really tough, and I thought, okay, we'll see. So anyway, she was. And we used to meet at Max's Opera Cafe, and we had a lot of fun playing with the wait staff. We engaged them, and
But one of the things I remember is there was something about Facebook, and I said, "Do you want to be friends on Facebook?" And she said, "No, I want to be friends with Bryce, your husband. I'm more interested in men." Yeah, and it was funny. She really didn't want to be friends. Okay. So, and then one time I had this thing with Bryce, and he had a little fit, and so he went into the bedroom. He wouldn't talk it through with me, and he went in the bedroom, and I was kind of laughing, and I just left. So I went around the corner and called her, and I told her the story, and she goes, "Well, maybe that's the best you can do." So I went, "Maybe that's the best you can do." You know, she kept repeating it, and so I went back home, and he was sitting in this chair, and I go, "Oh, you came out of quarantine," and then we were laughing. But you know, sometimes I remember that, like, whoever it is, man, woman, friend, you know, maybe that's the best they can do at that time, and that's got to be fine. So she will be sorely missed. I remember going up to her house, and I saw the beautiful work that you guys did, painting the walls and making it really pretty, and I did a couple little paintings for her that she liked, and she lost them, but anyway. And then her cat, who she loved.
Oh, yeah.
That cat, oh my gosh. Anyway, so yeah, Loel, I really feel blessed to have known her and having, oh, and one more thing I wanted to say was, I know that her biggest heartache was in the beginning of her sobriety when she didn't have contact with her boys. And that was her hardest time, and her most joyful time was reconnecting and having all of you in her life, and the love, you know, the love, and the grandkids and the daughters-in-law. She was very blessed, and her sister and us, but she was very blessed. She had a very rich family and friends. Thank you.
How many years sober do you have?
Oh, 34.
Wow.
Hi, my name is Brooke. Nana was my grandmother. I just wanted to share a memory. So I play violin, so it always means practicing. So I would always play for her when we came up to her house or to my Uncle Brad's house. So.
I'm summing up what I have to say about Loel. She was a gal and a friend of me. She stuck with me in the hard old days. She never cared if I had no dough. We rambled around in the rain and snow. And here's to you, my rambling gal. May all your rambling bring you joy. Here's to you, my rambling gal. May all your rambling bring you joy. A month ago in Fresno town, the weather, it was chilly and damp. She got the chills and she got 'em back. I lost the only friend I had. Now Loel is gone, and that's for sure. She's left me here to ramble on. And if I die and I go somewhere, I bet you $1 she's rambling there. And here's to you, my rambling gal. May all your rambling bring you joy. Here's to you, told me of a better life. She's told me stories, they were right. I followed her right to the end. And all I can say, she was my very best friend. Oh.
Hi, I'm Callie Marston. I'm her great niece. My grandfather, Garth, is in that picture, the yellow one over there, and I pointed out because I grew up on the East Coast and I didn't know this side of my family growing up. And when I moved out here, I made it a mission to get to know them, and I saw that smile. My grandfather had passed by that point, and so it's one of the biggest holes that to be able to see it again means a lot. And the blessing of this whole family that has been anchored by these fabulous women, where I still get to see the connection to my grandfather, has meant the world. And I really am blessed for the people that I have come to know and for the family and what she has all brought together. And I know I'm sending love from my grandmother and my aunts, my parents and cousins who all have got messages in the last couple of days that they were so grateful that some part of our family could be here to be with her, because they really stayed connected despite the miles and years.
Thank you. I'm Jean Marie Millar, and I'm Lo's daughter-in-law. And I met her nearly 4 years ago, Thanksgiving, and she told my then new boyfriend that I was in love with him already. And she loved me and accepted me, and it was beautiful. And I feel very lucky that I got to spend the last few months of her life with her. She was wonderful. I loved her very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Nathaniel. I'm Loel's only grandson. When I was really young, my sister Bethany and I had Nana. We called her Nana. She was just ours. And for a long time, we just got all of her attention. It was amazing. She was Christmas. She was magic walks. It was lighthearted and fun. So many of you have mentioned non-dogmatic. That left such an impression on me to balance idealism with practicality, which is something I still strive for. It wasn't until recently that I really started thinking about how she affected me as an adult, more than just Christmas presents or VHS tapes I think as her only grandson, with so many wonderful female cousins, she's the matriarch of the family. She set the tone she demanded respect. She would not put up for disrespect no matter who it was coming from. And I learned that early. That's how a woman should carry herself, what you should expect from her, how you should treat her. And I've reflected on the things that she lived through in her lifetime, and how that must have formed her, and how she just, without me even realizing it, just sort of channeled her into me and my sister. And I'm just grateful to be her grandson, and to have learned these things from her.
Love you, Nathaniel.
My name's Lori. I'm out in Loel. I think I'm one of the babies of the bunch. met Loel, when she asked me, young lady, why are you cuddling? Because, as we know, in sobriety and early sobriety, sometimes all you do is cry. I can't put words around what she gave me. Experience, strength, hope. Those are the three words that really come to mind. And we all have our stories in our own world, in our own relationship. But what she shared, they are been the greatest gift in my life, other than my son. And through her experience with you boys, she taught me how to be a better mom. And I'm getting the benefit of that now, because I have a 26-year-old who moved back home, we're roommates. But I'm able to see in him what she was seeing in you boys as you went through your lives, and how you came back into her life in different ways as you've grown older, and I'm getting to live that. And she told me to just stick around and do the next right thing, and life will happen, and it'll be a great life, and it is. And so I'm so grateful to her. I like all of us, a huge loss, a huge hole in my heart, but we did have a lot of laughs along the way. And so I try to remember the dance of the seven veils. Because we did have a lot of fun too, you know, and she had a wicked sense of humor. Anyway, thank you for putting this on, Patricia, thank you. And God, I love Loel.
My name's Diane. I'm an alcoholic. Hi, Diane. 28 and a half years. I met Loel in about 1993. She was my sponsor for 23 years. I was living in Nevada, and I was married just long. We had 9 years, and I had 2 years. I love what she shared at a meeting, so I went up and introduced myself. And she asked me, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm And she said, well, when you're done with that side trip, here's my card. So sure enough, a year later, I gave her a call. And I got sober in another state, and I knew that if I didn't come home to the area, I was going to die. And I had to leave my kids behind with their dad, because he wouldn't allow me to take them because I was in trouble. And Loel, that was so, that to that day, I don't think I'll ever get over it, but she knew where I was going. She knew exactly how that felt. I would have to say that Loel was the first time I ever experienced unconditional love. I mean, I knew that she loved me. She called me up one Saturday. She said, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm going to the mall. I'm going shopping. She goes, you can't afford to go to the mall. So every Saturday for a while, a couple of years, I think we'd go garage sailing. And I had so much fun. I was a nervous wreck. I mean, I couldn't, I was a peeled zero, as they would say in AA. And she was there just holding my elbow. And I totally came back to life, and I stayed sober. Whenever things would get bad, when I was living down, I lived right across the freeway from Buckley. I would say to myself, I know that Loel being in my life is here, but there's a God. And that's how I was Anyway, later on, my parents live up here. I said I have to go up there and take care of my dad and my mom, and because they had Alzheimer's, and my mom is still living. She said, if you go up there and move in with your mother, you're going to be a spinster with 4 cats. So here I am today. I'm a 65-year-old spinster with 3 care of my mom. But you know, it's a labor of love. It's like that cross, so to say, in my life is completely turning my heart around, and I'm learning that love is a verb, not a noun. And Loel taught me that. So I'm just heartbroken. You know, she was my real mother, and yeah, I'm sick. But so is my mother. But she walked me through that, and I used to negatively fantasize about the time when she would be gone, and now it's here, and I don't feel like she's gone. I really feel it. It's just a dimension away. You know, my first question when I have a problem is what was the old secret? I just don't have words. It's wonderful to see Mardell. I'm so grateful to be here.
Bethany, I'm the one she was talking to when you would call. I love my Nonna, and I spent so much time on the phone with her from the time I could walk. There's even video evidence of myself twirling in the cord of the phone, talking to Nonna, and was I saying anything? I don't know. It was more like blah, 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 but she understood it. She talked to me. I feel like I know all of you because she would tell me your stories without mentioning your names, of course. She loved her AA community so much, I almost felt robbed. And when I knew she would need to move with us and be with us, she never would leave you. And it just really spoke to the kind of person she was, that she just wanted to take care of everybody. And she was my best friend. In so many ways, she was also my mom. My mom was an addict. My mom, who fiercely loved Nonna, fiercely. She died 4 years ago, and Nonna was the second person to call. And even though she wasn't surprised, it's the first time she didn't know what to say. And it meant a lot to me that she would never call when my babies were young, because she always knew that I have 2 boys. And so she's like, I remember those years. You can't do anything. You can't even pee by yourself. She goes, so I'm not going to call and interrupt that because the girl needs to pee by herself. She taught me to be fierce when I didn't want to be. She taught me to never second guess myself. She taught me to be adventurous and not let a single person put me in my place. My poor husband. She also, I've been married almost 13 years. She never got his name right, Heather. So
I knew there wasn't hope.
She felt his name to be something else, and so his name is Richard. But I call him Rick, but she refused, and she called him Rich, and that was his name. And it was never going to change. My favorite thing about her was that I know crap about her, because when we would talk, she'd always say, and what else? Yeah. And I'd say, well, no, how's Popsy, which, by the way, I gave her. Thank you very much. You know, how's this? How's that? She would never answer me. I never knew. I never knew how she was feeling. I never knew what was bothering her. She would save that for her AA time.
and she just gives me the best you want to know about me. And it's really nice because now I feel like that's what I do, and that's what I want to do. And I'm so thankful for her. I walked in actually looking for her because it just doesn't make sense that we're all together and she's not here. So thank you for loving her so fiercely and for robbing me of her. Because that's all she wanted. She wanted to be with you guys and she loved it. So thank you.
I'm Loel's granddaughter-in-law. I met her once at our wedding. Lucky woman. I unfortunately don't have vast experiences with her like y'all do, but I can tell she's
Oh, come on. And I like her. I like Sarah like once or twice. Not much experience.
I'm Brad. I'm Lowell's middle son, and it's funny because as a speech teacher, I always tell my students, make sure you know what you want to say before it's time to say it. And this time I intentionally didn't do that. And I mean, how many stories could I tell, you know? But since we're kind of on an AA theme right now, I have some really distinct memories. I've been to more AA meetings before I was 18. I've never had a drop of alcohol. Never have been in my life. I remember the Alano Club really well. I remember going out back and playing in the sewage. What, the pipes? Because we were little and we could go look for spiders and girls and whatever. More spiders than girls back then. I remember the meetings that we would go to, and they would be so large for me as I was little. And I remember seeing people from about, I don't know, the collarbone up, because those were the days when you could smoke indoors. Yeah. And there was this wave. Oh my God. Right? So everybody's sober, but we're all killing each other. I remember that really, really well. And it's funny, like Bethany said, we've heard your name so many times. Megan, Patricia, Lori, I mean, on and on, all of these names, Elizabeth, Barbara Lee, I mean, all the time. And what's so funny is, if you hadn't introduced yourself, I wouldn't know who you were. But, you know, you talk about that she was tough and that she made you toe the line. I gotta tell you, she loved you so much. She always called you her ladies. For the last 30 years, I've heard about her ladies. What are you doing, Mom? Well, I'm going to lunch with Barbara Lee. Oh, I'm going to... It was just on and on and on. So I'm really pleased to meet you or re-meet you, because your names are embedded when I think of my mom and an AA. I think back on my childhood, and she wasn't around. You get to see her very seldom, and really wasn't a huge influence during those periods of time. But you know, I got to 18, 19, 20, realized I'd never done a single drug in my life. And I look back on her and that influence, and I'm really very grateful. When she did come back into my life hard was when I got married to my kids' mom, and then especially when they were born. And she never had any money, but my kids got to the point where they'd see an airplane in the sky, and they would say, "Is that Nana's plane?" Because she found a way to come and be, you know, the grandmother that I'd hoped she could be if we lived together, you know. And in my adult years, I tried pretty hard a few times to screw up my life. Fortunately, I wasn't successful, and one of the reasons for that is because my mom became my source of stability, and I would call her, and I swear to God, sometimes I would call her every 10 minutes. I'd hang up and go, okay, I got it. 10 minutes later, Mom. And she showed me what it is to be unjudgmental, peer support. As I grew up and tried this, that, and the other thing, she never once corrected me. I had plenty of that. But she was always support. And so I got into the habit, I called her every day. Initially because I needed it. And then I realized she needed it. And so I'm really happy to say that I had that connection with her. And then when she came to live with us back in January, I'm really grateful to my wife, Jean, because she was heroic in this effort to help me with my mom. And she didn't have to, but she was unbelievable. And what that gave me was a chance to connect with her. We didn't know she was declining. You know, we just knew she broke her ankle and needed getting into my truck. Thank you very much. But she blamed me. We go to the hospital, and then say, what happened? She said, my son threw me out of his truck. Right? Yeah. She was on a step stool, and the step stool went over. I had her from the back. She went down anyway. Yeah, she tells all the people, yeah, my son threw me out of his truck. And so we didn't know. We thought it was going to be just a short rehab. Then we'd bring her back up here and try to figure out how she was going to have her living arrangement. Then pretty soon we all realized, so did she, that this was probably going to be her last stop. And we still didn't know that she was on her way out. Little by little, we began to recognize things aren't right. And then we got hospice involved, and they were just incredible. And so I was able to connect with her really for the first time, I would say really in my life, in these last 8 months, on a level that was deep and meaningful. And so I look at this period of time as just been a wonderful thing for me with my mom. My brothers were making the trips. You know, my daughter would come up, and we just began to surround her. I got to meet Kelly and her son. It was just wonderful. So even to the end, my mom was bringing us together in meaningful ways. And I'll tell you this story too. Patricia came down several times. Just so wonderful. And Patricia said, you know, we need to get your mom a meeting. And I said, why? She can't go anywhere. She goes, no, we'll get the meeting to come to her. And so Patricia calls up the group in Oakhurst where we live. And sure enough, on one day, 5 or 6 ladies came and they had a meeting in her room around her hospital bed. And one of the ladies, I forget her name, the main one, Gwen, you were talking to. And she said, you know what? I haven't been in a meeting in years, and I need to, and I need to give back, and your mom has given me this. So even to the very end, my mom was helping the ladies, and all she was doing was lying there, you know. So anyway, she was wonderful. Of course, I could go on for a long time, but I want to thank all of you for being there and for loving her. You really were the foundation of what she was about all these years, and you were her pride and joy, and you gave to her, and she gave to us, so you gave to us, and I guess we gave to you in some way or other, I don't know. But thank you for showing up and being a part of our lives.
So I'm Andy, I'm the oldest, and aside from Mala, I think I knew Loel the longest. In fact, I knew her all my life. 60 years now. And unlike Brad, though, I'm not the speech teacher, so I did write all sorts of stuff in trying to think of something like a eulogy. And in doing that, without trying to sound too dramatic, and I hope you forgive me for this, what I realized is that Loel's life is the hero's journey. And if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, there are aspects of what he calls the hero's journey that describe Loel. And not the big Arnold Schwarzenegger hero, but the quiet, strong, sustaining hero. And I hear that in the stories that you were telling. And you may have heard my mom tell these stories in meetings. but I'd like to tell you some of the history that brought her from the beginning to where she ended up. Look at what time is it? We have till 6, right?
Till sunset, yes. You're not going to throw us out. Go on.
You may be familiar that my mother's grandfather, William H. Marston, was a sea captain. Orphaned young in Maine and shipped out to sea. And after a lifetime at sea, became wealthy by his own work and owned shipping lines, ended up being sold off to Matson Line. Ended up being wealthy, retired in Berkeley, had property there. In the year 1900, he was worth $5 million. Wow. Which right now would sound pretty good. If you account for inflation, 117 years, it comes out to somewhere around $280 million. And my mom was born into that affluence. Now, we didn't get any of that unless you guys are holding out on me, Duncan. Anything you want to let me know? Her father ended up retiring, I think, fairly young and became a river rat and spent a lot of my inheritance, which I guess is okay. But a lot of that went to a life of some affluence for my mom and Mala. River runs, private schools, girls' schools. Mom was even a debutante in San Francisco, which is great. But remember, she was growing up in the 1930s, 1940s, early 1950s, and the expectations for women were very different from today. Patricia, you've mentioned it several times, don't let other people define you. But I think that was an aspect of the times that she grew in. In the hero's journey, the first part is the life, but something doesn't quite work. And I think that that life didn't really fit Loel very well. But she went with that program until the next phase, which is the crisis. And unfortunately for us, that crisis started right about the time she married our father. Now they had a society wedding in San Francisco, tuxedo, full bridal gown. Mala, I'm sure it was wonderful, right? Soon after that, my father, who didn't come from money, although a good Berkeley family, they were much more interested in science academics. My father wanted to go to get his master's degree and be a professor, so he took my mom to Washington, D.C., which again didn't seem to fit very well. As we were cleaning out my mom's place, we found a number of letters, and to tell you the truth, a lot of them were so emotionally dense, the letters to her parents, that I couldn't read but part of them. And there's a lot of interference in the family with my parents' marriage. My mother was complaining about how she didn't fit in Washington, how she was lonely. It sounded like it was really difficult. And she was there 5, 6 years, I guess. And her marriage to my father wasn't good. My father also grew up in an alcoholic home, also difficult circumstances. I don't know if they even had a chance to make it. Fortunately for me, 1957, I was born. That was good. That was in Washington, D.C. But before I was a year old, my mother separated and moved back to be with her support group, her parents, Mala, in Berkeley. Now remember, 1950s, divorce, separation, there was a huge stigma for that. So she was a pioneer with that. Not a comfortable one, I'm sure. They reconciled not too long after, but again, there was all this interference in the letters that we saw from her parents. They reconciled, moved in together back in Berkeley. Brad was born. And my father worked for Matson Line for a while, got a job as a professor in Orange County, Orange Coast College. We moved there in 1962, I think it was, and Duncan was born there in Orange County. And Mom was trying to do what was expected of women, be the housewife, be the mother. And boy, that didn't fit for her. She described Orange County as a place where there were bean farmers and tin workers. And that was about right. Orange County was about like that about that time. And she was so unhappy one of my clear memories was where she would be sitting on the kitchen counter on the phone, gallon bottle of Gallo, Sauterne. I hate Gallo. And she'd be talking to Mala, her only support at that, and she'd be crying, and it was constant. It was at that time she became, I'm sure, angry and frustrated, and that's about the time she became abusive. And I remember getting hit by her by the belt. Brad and Duncan, I think, remember something similar. And there were not good memories of those times. And heroes, like my mom, don't get through their trials without wounds and without scars. I think some of those wounds never really quite healed. Even though we talked about it, and she asked forgiveness, and I'd forgiven her many times. But I don't think it quite worked out. Right about 1967, as Ruthie said, her mom, my mom's cousin Marge, got my mom to an AA meeting. And that was the start of the next phase of Hero's journey, which is mentor, finding somebody to rescue you, sort of like Yoda. Somebody to take you from this crisis and teach you to make things work. Unfortunately for us, though, it didn't save the marriage. And right about that time, my mom split from my dad, and the last time went to Marin to be with her support network with Mala, Brian, and the kids. Moved in with them for a while and took us with her. And eventually she became a single mom in Corte Madera and worked in the city. I think that was the first full-time job my mom ever really had, as a secretary in the city. I remember it was 1960s because she had a miniskirt. You may have seen the pictures.
Oh boy.
Your 40-year-old mom, that's a little weird, but okay. And it was not an easy time because of the stress, the three of us. I mean, we were latchkey kids to a large degree. Remember, we did have fun. By the way, you know, my mom's time with my dad was not all misery. They did have some good times. You can see them in the pictures. And we did have good times in Corte Madera too. You guys remember going down the stairs on the blanket, bouncing down the stairs?
We knocked off the neighbors, the
painting,
pictures
the
off the neighbors. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Those, it was fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Face first.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened. I was a lot handsomer then. But this time started 2 years of the nastiest divorce you had ever seen. And it was a lot about custody. My dad did nasty things. I mean, you remember he came up one time, he was taking pictures of the condo, just as a surprise. And if you know anything about 3 boys in a condo, it didn't look all that good. And they fought, and the parents got involved, and it ended up where we were in court in Santa Ana, where the trial was. And Brad Duncan and I were hauled into the judge's chambers, and the judge asked, who do you want to live with? Imagine, as you're a kid, 12-year-old kid, Brad was 8, Duncan 6. Who do you want to live with? Which parent do you love better? So that was great. Well, he said Dad, because Dad had the stability, he had the home, he had money, more money. And so we went to live with our father. Another tremendous wound. This is where you all came in to be so important, because Loel took the AA program, 12 Steps, 12 Traditions, and that saved her life. And you talked about how she saved your lives, but you saved hers, because as she worked her program, mentoring you was a big part of that. The next big wound, as I think you alluded to, you said when she lost contact with us, 1969, for reasons I'm still not clear about, my father had a 6-month sabbatical from college and took us to England, which sounded like a big adventure.
Yeah.
But my mom wasn't a part of that. Even more bizarre, and I understand my dad has no idea why he did this. His sabbatical only being 6 months, he couldn't extend it. He came back and left us there. Can you imagine being 6 years old, hadn't seen your mom for 6 months, and your dad is gone? And that's where Duncan was. Brad was 8. Being 12, you know, I was the old man, had to be very responsible. But we were left in the care of my dad's girlfriend and various family members of hers that would come visit, and a couple of au pairs. Finally, after a year, it was time to come back, and we got on the plane, came back to Los Angeles, and my mom said that I was very different because I was from 11 to 12 at that time, a lot of maturation. And yeah, there's the reconnection, but imagine your 6-year-old boy going to Europe for a year you don't get to see him. So, another huge one. And you guys kept her alive during that time. So the next part of the hero's journey is to use what you've learned for something that's going to be beneficial. And you are the legacy of that. And in fact, as you have grown in AA, so have we grown along with you. Because we were a part of that. We've attended a lot of meetings. We've heard your stories. And as my mom learned about parenting again, I think that she used those lessons for all of us. The hero's legacy is that you make the world better somehow, that you improve it, that you're successful, you're victorious. And this gathering today and the stories you've told today are her victory. And she had 50 years of being sober. In fact, we were all there for her 50th birthday. I got a lot of you on the phone. I'm grateful for you being there. There are 2 families you can have in your life. There's the family you're born in, and then there's the family you've chosen. And I'm very glad to have all of you as part of our family, and our gift to you was Loel, and I'm glad to hear that that's worked out so well.
She didn't have you, she got all of us. Yes, is there anyone else who wants to share?
Granddaughter.
Crystal?
Yeah, I'm her granddaughter, and I'd just like to say that she was just a great person to be with, and I enjoyed having her and spending time with her and going up to visit. That was always good to look forward to, and that I will miss her dearly.
Thank you.
Can I share one more thing too?
Oh, sure.
Actually, kind of on 2 sides. Jean Marie, I love, Lowell loved you so much, and I have to tell a funny story that Lowell loved Jean so much that she talked to Brad a little bit. She says, Brad, don't screw this up, because if you guys don't work out, we're keeping Jean. And Brad, you're going to have to leave out there. And it's one of these things. Your own mom said that to you as well. She loved her so much. And I have to say one more thing. Nobody brought it up, but there's another memory that came through. And I thought how appropriate it was. Did you guys hear the ice cream truck going by?
Yes.
How many people knew how much Lowell was addicted to ice cream? Huge bowls of ice cream. So I'm kind of thinking as this is going by, somehow Lowell had that involved.
Klondike bars.
Klondike bars. So next time you have your bowl of ice cream, definitely think of her as well. You guys shared with her individually each and every time. You said, well, Lowell's with me at right time. Right now, Lowell's with all of us.
Yeah.
She
And
is well.
the beauty of these events like this is that we, in this conversation that Lowell didn't really get to be a part of and yet was very much a part of, it's a conversation without Lowell but about Lowell. We all have more of Lowell to take away with us. And Lowell continues in each and every one of our hearts. And it's like Diane said, I know I miss her, but I've done a 4th and 5th step with a sponsee since she's passed, and I'm just going to continue to share what she gave me, and I know you all will too. If you can gather around and grab a hand, we're going to close in a very traditional way. Did you have the total?
I didn't get yours.
Oh my gosh.
Mine?
Yeah.
32.
Okay.
Jean, do you have anybody else that needs to add their sobriety? No? You got it?
So, just present here, and I know it's not everybody, we have 361.25 years.
And we all have today.
Yes, we do.
All right, a moment of silence for those who may still be suffering, and a special gratitude for our dear departed Lowell. Our Father,
Our Father,
who
who
art
art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come,
thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
Keep coming back, it works.
It really does.
It sure does.
I'm going to bring out cake, so please stick around. And Loel's honor, let's eat cake.
Yes, let's eat cake.
I didn't even really until I had to really think about it. I think my dad told me so. Had to go through all the cousins and go.
Thank you, sweetie.
Such sweet girls. Oh my gosh, I wish you could come play the violin in Ohio. We have a wonderful university back there.
So how are you?
Yeah.
We're be hunting.
Music, Capital University.
Yeah. Be hunting for universities.
All right. There's a university in every town in Ohio.
Yeah, it's still recording.
Thank you for sharing your mother with us.
Are you kidding me?
Fallon, I guess Fallon.